Imagine traveling back in time, walking through the stone corridors of an ancient gladiator school and feeling the weight of the responsibility each man carried. While crowds filled the arenas, thirsty for action and blood, few imagined what was happening behind the scenes. The detailed nutritional care that transformed ordinary men into combat machines. Today, we are going to discover how the diet and lifestyle in the Roman Empire influenced these warriors and the secrets they kept to maintain their strength in the face of constant danger. Even though many people believe that gladiators lived in luxury or that their only thought was to fight, the truth is very different. So, prepare yourself for a historical journey full of curiosities, where Galen, Pliny, Seneca, Appian, and even a dedicated Lanista will guide us. Every detail of the diet, every ancient record, tells a chapter of sacrifice and strategy. But before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos filled with historical curiosities about ancient Rome. Speaking of sacrifice, have you ever wondered how much a gladiator's life was worth and how that influenced his diet? Let's check it out in the first topic. The value of the gladiators. Gladiators were considered a high-cost investment. The Lanista, always alert to profit opportunities, needed to keep these fighters in enviable condition. The care started with nutrition, as it was the daily energy that kept them on their feet. Galen, as an experienced physician, understood that a well-fed warrior's body was like an extra shield in the arena. Upon entering one of these schools, you would see men of various ethnicities and origins, but all with the same goal: to survive the combats. Under the pressure to deliver great spectacles, the trainers did not hesitate to invest in foods rich in carbohydrates and other essential nutrients. The danger was real. Without proper nutrition, they simply wouldn't withstand the injuries or the pace of daily training. Pliny the Elder, in his writings, described how valuable gladiators were for public entertainment. He closely observed the way they were treated, as this was yet another curiosity worthy of his notes in Naturalis Historia. After all, a sick or malnourished gladiator was a sure loss for the Lanista, and worse yet, a failure before the crowd that demanded spectacular fights. And since we're talking about nutrition, did you know that the staple food of gladiators surprised those who believed they only lived on meat? Hold on to that curiosity, and let's move on to the next topic. The power of barley. Unlike a Roman banquet filled with meats and delicacies, the basis of the gladiator's diet was usually barley. This grain, resilient and easy to cultivate, was used to make breads, soups, and porridges. For many, it might seem simple, but the truth is that it provided long-lasting energy. It was like heavy fuel to endure the intense daily training and combats. Galen himself emphasized the importance of barley in building a reserve of adipose tissue. It may sound strange, but that extra layer of fat helped to cushion the blows received in fights. This gave the gladiators more time to resist in combat, an essential factor when you have swords, spears, and all kinds of weapons aimed at you. For Pliny the Elder, barley also symbolized a way to make nutrition cheap and effective. In his writings, he notes that many gladiators were even nicknamed barley eaters. The term, far from being pejorative, showed that they were well-fed, strong, and ready to entertain thousands of spectators in the arenas. Now, how about discovering one of the most unusual mixtures these warriors consumed? You won't believe where part of the strength in these fighters' bones came from. The ash drink. Although it may seem bizarre, archaeological excavations and historical accounts indicate that some gladiators drank a mixture of water with vegetal or mineral ashes. This beverage, likely of an unpleasant taste, was seen as a way to reinforce the bones. Strontium, found in elevated levels in the bones of these fighters, is evidence that there existed a kind of ancient supplementation. Galen does not directly describe this drink in all his treatises, But he reinforces the idea that gladiators needed foods and substances rich in minerals to speed up recovery after injuries. And those who were there to closely observe these practices were the lanistas and their assistants, who did everything possible to keep the warriors on their feet. According to Appian, a historian of Greek origin who recorded various events of the empire, gladiators became symbols of resilience precisely because they followed unconventional nutritional customs. Even though there wasn't an absolute consensus on the effectiveness of the ashes, there was a general belief that any extra resource could mean the difference between life and death in the arena. But if they sought strength in various ways, why wasn't meat such a frequent food? Get ready to debunk that myth in the next topic. Lack of meat in the diet. Contrary to the image of warriors devouring large portions of meat, the reality was very different. Meat was an expensive product, normally reserved for the wealthier classes. Gladiators, often being slaves or prisoners, did not have easy access to these delicacies, except on special occasions, such as after great victories or during festivities sponsored by influential figures in Rome. Seneca, in his philosophical writings, stated that the abundance of meat was linked to the luxury and whims of the rich. For gladiators, the priority was continuous energy, not expensive banquets. Investing resources in quality meats could end up bleeding the lanistas' own coffers, which was not strategic at all. After all, money had to be carefully calculated for training, armaments, and medical care. Even when meat was offered, it was usually goat or chicken, cheaper and more viable sources than beef. Thus, although it may seem counterintuitive, this restriction forced gladiators to depend on other foods capable of sustaining the intensity of their training, while also keeping their body weight under control. Curious to know what replaced meat to provide protein and vigor? The answer appears now, so stay tuned. The power of legumes. Beans, chickpeas, and lentils were some of the nutritional pillars that supported the gladiators' diet. The advantage of these legumes was that they provided plant-based proteins as well as carbohydrates, minerals, and fiber. Appian recorded that this type of food was stored in large quantities in the kitchens of gladiator schools because it was cheap, durable, and easy to prepare. Galen highly valued the consumption of these legumes, believing that they helped preserve muscle strength. It was common to see enormous pots of lentils cooked together with simple herbs, forming hearty meals that could be served at any time of the day. The slower digestion also helped provide a continuous supply of energy, preventing abrupt drops in stamina. Thus, while many common Romans might have varied their menus more, the gladiator needed a pragmatic and functional diet. Have you ever wondered how this kind of food shaped the destiny of an empire? Leave your like now so we can continue bringing you stories as impactful as this one. After all, even without the luxuries of the upper classes, these warriors found in grains a source of resilience to face the unpredictable battlefield. But the diet of these men wasn't made up only of hot meals. Want to know how they managed to get instant energy? Come with me to the next point. Dried fruits, portable energy. One of the most practical strategies for maintaining energy levels during training and fights was the consumption of dried fruits, such as figs and dates. These foods worked like a kind of quick snack during training breaks or even on trips to other arenas. Pliny the Elder himself described dried fruits as excellent sources of natural sugar, easy to store for long periods. Gladiators frequently moved from one place to another at the behest of the lanistas, needed foods that wouldn't spoil quickly and that kept them focused and strong. A handful of dried fruits, along with a sip of water, was enough to recharge the body until the next meal. After all, there was no room for weakness when the arena awaited outside. Seneca, in his writings, reflected on how small things in nature could provide great utility to human beings. In the case of the gladiators, dried fruit symbolized a life-saving sweetness in their harsh and risky routine. Since they were easy to transport, they became constant companions in moments of greatest need. Now let's take a look at what added color to these fighters' plates, how cabbages and other greens could make a difference in the recovery of the wounded. Vegetables and the power of cabbage. Vegetables also played a fundamental role in the gladiators' diet, especially cabbage, known for its medicinal properties. Many believed that applying cabbage leaves on bruises and wounds sped up healing and reduced inflammation. Even though there were no scientific studies like those today, the observation and repetition of these practices created a kind of emergency recipe that was widely respected. Galen argued that the body needed a balance among different types of foods to avoid nutritional deficiencies. Green leaves and vegetables in general provided vitamins and minerals that were rare in other sources, perfectly complementing the energy from grains. This combination also helped boost the gladiators' immunity, preventing diseases that could easily spread in training schools. When Pliny the Elder stated that cabbage not only nourishes but also heals, he reinforced the idea that nature offered various gifts. It was just a matter of knowing how to use them. For a gladiator marked by the scars of battles, any way to alleviate pain and recover faster was welcome. Thus, even the simplest dishes became great allies in the struggle for survival. And if cabbage helped with recovery, what spices did they use to make the meals at least palatable and even medicinal? Stay with us to find out. Spices and health. No matter how rustic a gladiator's kitchen was, spices and aromatic herbs appeared to add flavor and, as a bonus, medicinal benefits. Garlic and onion, for example, were considered strong allies for blood circulation. Galen recommended the moderate intake of these plants to maintain healthy blood, and thus the energy needed in combats. Some gladiator schools even had their own gardens where herbs like oregano and mint grew. Even though there wasn't a wide variety of luxurious spices, such as those imported from Asia, available only to the very rich, the little that was available was enough to add a touch of flavor and keep the fighters interested in eating well. After all, eating the same thing every day without any seasoning could discourage anyone. Seneca believed that true human strength came from a body in balance with the mind, and part of that balance was in one's relationship with food. Eating little but well, with ingredients that promoted health, was the best tactic for someone who had to deal with constant pressures and pain. In the case of the gladiators, a well-seasoned dish was almost a comfort amid the harshness of the fights. Now that you know which ingredients appeared on these warriors' plates, let's visit the enormous kitchens and discover how everything was prepared. Are you ready to take a peek into the routine of the lanistas and their gladiators? The kitchen and the organization of the Lanista gladiator schools, known as ludi, were true complexes that housed everything from dormitories to collective kitchens. The Lanista was the central figure in this universe. He controlled finances, the acquisition of food, training, and even the marketing of the combats. Without proper organization, keeping so many men ready for battle would be an impossible task. In large stoves, under the command of enslaved cooks, enormous pots of barley, soup, cooked vegetables, and meats, on rare occasions, were prepared. The routine was intense. Feeding dozens or even hundreds of fighters required an almost uninterrupted production schedule. Amid the heat and the aroma of food, concentration had to be maximum to avoid waste or accidents. Appian points out that many lanistas hired doctors or consulted Galen to optimize the gladiators' nutrition. After all, a well-fed warrior fought better, bringing fame and fortune to the establishment. This symbiosis of interests kept the mechanism running. The school prospered, the public was entertained, and the empire reinforced its culture of spectacles. But did everyone receive the same attention and the same meals? Or was there a hierarchy among the best gladiators? Let's now discover the big difference that some of them had. The champions and their privileges. Not all gladiators were treated equally. Those who stood out in the arenas, gaining fame and prestige, had access to more generous meals. They could even receive portions of meat more frequently or exotic fruits, and enjoy slightly greater comfort within the barracks. Behind this was the mindset of the lanista, to value those who earned him more coins and reputation. Galen even reported that in some cases, these elite gladiators had access to special supplements prepared with nobler wines and rare herbs for quicker muscle recovery. Pliny the Elder observed that Roman society had a peculiar fascination with the arena heroes. Thus, it was expected that the lanista would invest where he saw the greatest return. However, this superiority did not last forever. A single defeat or a severe injury could cause a warrior to lose his status and return to the common cycle, depending solely on grains, soups, and vegetables. Ultimately, the arena was unforgiving. Its glory was fleeting, but nutrition remained one of the few constants in any gladiator's life. We have reached the end of this journey behind the scenes of a gladiator's life, where we discovered that the strength of these warriors went far beyond muscles. It was in the simple foods, in the meticulous care of physicians, in the discipline of the lanistas, and in the unwavering courage of those who faced death head-on. Every detail, every ingredient, was part of a greater strategy to prolong lives, that despite everything, were always on the brink of danger. If you enjoyed this time-traveling journey and want more fascinating stories, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and share this video with your friends. Also, comment on which part caught your attention the most. We thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next video about ancient Rome and the Empire. Until then.